last 10 months, he's been focused on the 3 R's: refocus, re-energize, and be more results-oriented. He also knows he's got 2 ears and 1 mouth because he needs to listen twice as much as he speaks. Who is he? You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Myrtle Beach Herald. We're focused on growth in the Myrtle Beach area, and we're visiting with Brad Dean, the Chief Executive Officer of the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Greg. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming in. It's so exciting to think so much has been happening recently, obviously on the eve of 9/11. 3 years ago tomorrow, so much having happened in America and so many big things going on these days, Brad. And obviously we want to do a little retrospective and see how Myrtle Beach has continued to grow since 3 years ago.
Sure. Well, boy, our country's changed in the last 3 years, and in some cases it's challenged a lot of us. The very fabric of our society has been tested, but the country and this area have resounded great, and I'm excited about the future, not only of the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce, but the Myrtle Beach area with some exciting things happening and some exciting prospects in the future. It's a great time to be along the Grand Strand.
Truly, it is amazing, Brad. So much has been going on and such explosive growth, not only in the last 3 years, but in the last 3 months. I mean, you just think about it. Some of the things like last week out here on the former Air Force Base, the announcement of McCaffrey Interests coming in to buy the 87 acres there from the Redevelopment Authority.
You know, it's interesting on that one, not only the impact that could have right around the Air Force Base in the Myrtle Beach area, but just the fact that a first-class firm like that would come in with some high expectations tells you just how well this area is perceived outside of the Grand Strand, and I think that's a signal to what our future could bring.
Absolutely. Brad, real quick about yourself, for folks who may not have seen you last year when we kicked off, when you were co-chairing the Heart Walk with Graham Edwards. Of course, it was exciting. A couple of days, Susan Mungo from Santee Cooper was in with us talking about this year's Heart Walk. We miss you at the helm of it, but are you originally from the area?
Originally grew up in the Midwest, and after graduating from the University of Illinois, relocated to the East Coast, did a lot of traveling. Got to spend a lot of time in different states and different countries, and of course ended up working for General Electric in Puerto Rico. From there came to Florida, and somehow ended up in South Carolina and couldn't be happier. My family and I have lived in a lot of different places, but we're proud to call the Grand Strand, South Carolina, home.
Absolutely. And you said you were down in Puerto Rico for a while. What was that like?
You know, it was interesting from a personal perspective. Spoke very little Spanish, and really was a unique experience to be a part of a different culture, and to live in an island really is an experience in and of itself. And being a part of a Fortune 500 company and a manufacturer was a much different experience. I learned a lot, really enjoyed it, and of course the greatest gain was, of course, my wife Miriam, who I met there and married, and have now brought her to the States, and we're happy to be in South Carolina. Puerto Rico is a beautiful, beautiful country, and it's certainly a fun place to be, but we couldn't be happier in South Carolina.
Now, has she been working on you, learning a little Spanish, Brad? Is that something?
You know, I was doing really well until she met you and learned how well you speak Spanish, and now I'm back to third grade primer Spanish. But fortunately, you know, in the Caribbean, they teach English at a very early age, and we don't do that here in the States. We don't teach Spanish or other languages quite that early, so it's hard to pick it up. So I know just enough to keep in good with my in-laws, and from there, I'm not much more effective.
Yeah, Brad, now, and of course, you all have 2 children. Has she begun training them Spanish so they can talk in Spanish when you're not around, or when you are around?
And I must confess, the kids do tutor me every now and then on what I need to know, so they're picking it up much better than their father is.
Yeah, how exciting, Brad. That's amazing. And of course, you all have been here. You've been on the Strand now how long?
Almost 10 years. I moved here in May of 1995, and of course that was another growth period. Of course, Broadway at the Beach being new, and came here with the Rank organization to open up the Hard Rock Cafe, and that was an exciting time for the Myrtle Beach area, just to see the explosive growth that's going on. And I think we're on the cusp of another big growth boom. And, of course, we want good growth in this area, growth that benefits all of us, those who not only live here and work here, but also for the vacationers that play here.
You know, Gordon Hirsch was with us about a month ago, and he was talking about the opening of Broadway at the Beach back in 93, 94, or the explosive opening opportunities there. And he talked about there was a time when Doug Wendell at Burrs & Chapin kept saying, when is the community going to recognize what we're doing here? When are they going to recognize? And Gordon kept saying they'll only know at opening day. Of course, they had lines up and down virtually to the state line. up and down 17 bypass, getting ready for that big day.
Absolutely.
And I guess it's tough now. When you say we're looking at explosive growth going forward, do folks recognize that around you, Brad?
I think some see it in segments, but it's really hard, Greg, to see the big picture. And just like you and I, a lot of the viewers of this show, it relates to what they see on a day-to-day basis. Just last week, I was at the grand opening of the Bass Pro Shops. Absolutely amazing to see this monumental store that brings a whole new aspect to shopping and entertainment and dining to the Grand Strand. And it was interesting how many people have been to a Bass Pro Shop somewhere else in the country, and here they are now seeing it at Myrtle Beach, and it really brings to light, I think, the potential for this market. So I think we see it. Sometimes we don't see it till it happens, and sometimes we don't realize the great impact it has on the Grand Strand. Of course, that's why we've got to balance that growth with the needs for a high quality of life. But at the end of the day, where would you rather live, work, or play than the Grand Strand, and right here in Myrtle Beach? You
got it. How exciting for you now, Brad. You've been at the helm of the Chamber for, golly, a little north of a year?
Coming up on a year. Was announced at the annual meeting at the end of October in 2003. Okay. So I've learned that Chamber years are like dog years. They count as one, but they feel like 7. It's been an exciting time, and I've learned a lot. Hopefully we've accomplished a lot, and most importantly, we're trying to reposition the organization, reprioritize, and re-energize to look forward to a very bright future for the Chamber and for the community.
Those 3 R's I heard you talk about or read about in an interview, and of course you talked about repurpose. I mean, re-energize, refocus, and be more results-oriented. And you all are really planning that out, laying out the groundwork for 2005, which will be a gigantic year, and every year. How are you all going about? Let's talk about those 3 R's there.
Yeah, I think the first thing we did was to listen. You get 2 ears and 1 mouth, and according to my grandfather, that was so we could listen twice as much as we speak. So we listened to the community through community forums, surveys. We listened to our members. So what do you want? What do you expect? And there were some things that we weren't doing we needed to be doing. There were some things we needed to change, and frankly, there were some things we were doing very well. So it was good to get in touch with those people, the community, and our members that perhaps maybe hadn't had that opportunity to speak out on what they wanted from us. From there, we looked internally and asked ourselves, is the organization structured and staffed to be great in the future? We've had a great past, but we don't want our future to be held hostage by our past. So we want to make sure that we have not only the right people on the bus, but the right people in the right seats. And what you see now at the Chamber almost a year later is some new faces, some new positions. In some cases, we've combined jobs or duties. In some cases, we've added positions. We recently opened up a welcome center at the Myrtle Beach International Airport, an exciting thing. And that was the first time we've done it. We're the only chamber in the nation we know that's doing this. And it enables us to reach out to nearly 700,000 visitors to the community who are coming here and give them a warm welcome, so that the airport is more than just a place that you walk through, but rather the beginning of a great vacation.
Wow, Brad, that is exciting. You think the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce is one of the few, if not the only?
It's funny, when we started, I asked the staff, I said, find some others that were doing this. I figured if there's a good idea out there, no reason why we can't copy it.
Yeah.
Couldn't really find anybody other than Hawaii, where they really do a great job at welcoming you at the airport. And I got to say, the county council, the airport, and particularly Liz Gillen have been really supportive. And now when you walk into Myrtle Beach International Airport, having got off your flight, you get a warm welcome. Sometimes there's an entertainment aspect there with one of our local theaters or restaurants. There's assistance, and of course we're working closely with the volunteers at the airport to make it a warm environment to welcome visitors and to assist them. And at the end of the day, that's really what the hospitality business is about, is welcoming people to this great community that we're fortunate enough to live in, and giving them a great start to a vacation and helping them enjoy their stay while they're here.
I know we're focused on 3 R's, but you use the V word, volunteer. There are a heck of a lot of volunteers involved with the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. You don't always think about it. You think of the Chamber, obviously, serving members' needs, the 2,300 plus members you all have in the area, but of course volunteers are indicative of much of what you do.
They really are, Greg. We've got over 500 active volunteers. That's committees, boards, councils, as well as volunteers that work at events. The Chamber simply could not run without its volunteer base, and we're very excited that for the first time ever, we're going to formally recognize those volunteers. We've always said thank you, but maybe not in quite the way that we would like, and so we're excited that actually coming up at the end of this month on September 30th, the first ever volunteer lunch, and of course The Myrtle Beach Herald will be sponsoring that, and we are excited not only to recognize our volunteers, but to select a Volunteer of the Year, someone that has gone way beyond the call of duty in volunteer assistance with the Chamber and, in effect, with the community. So another great way for us to recognize those who have been so important in our past and will be absolutely critical to our future success.
That is very exciting, Brad. We're in the process of launching volunteeroftheyear.com to try to highlight that person. And so when we find out who that is, and on the 30th, that'll go live to highlight that person all over the world. The Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce Volunteer of the Year. So that site's going up week after next. We're very excited. You know, there's so much that goes into efforts to recognize folks. And, of course, I wasn't looking for a plug there, but when you talk about re-energize, refocus, and be more results-oriented, you're constantly not only thinking about folks coming into the area, but thinking about your chamber members.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber has, for many, many years, been the destination marketer. Of course, we work with other organizations like Myrtle Beach Golf Holiday to promote all the great things this community offers to visitors. We don't want to lose that. In fact, we want to get better at that, and we don't just want to follow trends. We'd like to set a few as well. But we feel that our role in this community can and should be much greater than simply advertising for tourists. We think that we have got to be a voice, a set of eyes and ears and a mouthpiece for the small business community. And if not us, then who? So one of the things we're looking at is looking at the programs to see what do small businesses need. Is it education? Is it training? Is it to be in Columbia lobbying for important initiatives that could help small business, or if they don't pass, could kill small business? We think that's a very important part of the Chamber's role. And it's not that we've not done that in the past, but maybe it hasn't been as high of a priority as it needs to be. We also think that there's some important services in this community that we can provide. And in some cases, it's things we'll do. In other cases, it's things we'll partner with. I'm excited that coming up in the fall, we will actually have the first ever business expo on the South Strand, and that will be a partnership with Georgetown County Chamber and the Surfside Business Association. And that's just a great example of how we're going to facilitate a great event for local businesses through other organizations as well as our own. And I think you'll see other events like that. Cooperation and collaboration and some innovative ideas will enable us to go above and beyond what we've done in the past and ensure an even greater future.
In this cooperative of working with other area chambers of commerce, Brad, just real quick for a viewer who may not fully understand exactly how a chamber works, and of course you represent so many folks, and a lot of them are non-business. You represent individuals who happen to be members or other cooperatives. It's amazing the impact that a chamber can have, but teaming up with other chambers up and down from Georgetown to Little River really opens some incredible opportunities.
Absolutely, and I've always said, Greg, and I know you believe, the greatest things we will do in this area we will do together. It won't come through any one individual or any one organization. And I view the other chambers, we're all sort of a family, and like any family, of course mine included, there were times when the brothers and sisters might fight and squabble, but at some point you grow up and you work together and you realize that the great things that happen is when nobody cares who gets credit, but rather what the end results are going to be. There were a few years ago where we were squabbling over monies and who's going to take this and who's going to control that. Fast forward a few years later, we're going to be unveiling the biggest, most aggressive consumer promotion schedule, probably 40 weeks worth next year, and at least 8 of those weeks we will go in tandem with our friends at the North Myrtle Beach Chamber. When we go to Washington on trips, I'm surrounded by people from North Myrtle Beach, Conway, Little River, even Aner and Loris, and we meet on a monthly basis now. So a lot of it's just good communication, a lot of it's cooperation and collaboration, and frankly a lot of it's just recognizing that as long as none of us are worried about who gets credit, we can all share credit for a lot of great things happening along the Grand Strand.
Golly, Brad, how exciting. You know, 30 minutes just doesn't give appropriate opportunity to highlight so many things going on. There's so many things we need to focus on. And, of course, one of the big things you all have been working so hard on is gaining respect in our state capital up in Columbia, and so much that can happen. I think you highlighted that in a letter that was sent out to chamber members. What have you all been doing to continue to recognize? And those folks have had great respect, but it's even strengthening that relationship.
Absolutely. For many, many years, the Grand Strand has been very fortunate to have legislators that represent us very well. In fact, I will say without doubt that we have the strongest area delegation of any in South Carolina, and I believe that. Unfortunately, common sense isn't always common, and when you get to places like Columbia and D.C., sometimes it's not who gets what they need. Sometimes it's who spends more money to get what they want. And we found that in Columbia, they're happy to take the money generated by the Grand Strand economy, but they don't always understand our needs. And the only way that I know to address that is to be front and center with elected officials, not only ours, but those throughout the state, explaining them to the needs of the Grand Strand and what we need to continue to be a cash cow for this state. You know, the people who live and work in our community not only fund schools here, but throughout South Carolina. We fund government programs throughout South Carolina. We don't need a whole lot of government funds. We just need the government to understand the importance of the Grand Strand to the state. And so what we're doing is taking the message to Columbia and to Washington, D.C. to let those elected officials know just what the Grand Strand needs to continue to be such a strong funding source for the state of South Carolina. And we're going to do that again and again and again. And if we don't get what we need, it won't be because they didn't hear us. It will only be because we didn't get it when we needed it, and we'll continue to try and get those results, whether it's highways, airports, or government funds for tourism promotion, things that this area needs to continue to grow and thrive in our future.
Yeah, you have to focus on two capitals, Columbia and Washington. And obviously there's a big focus. You mentioned highways, I-73. Talk about that. Share with that a little bit. Obviously, you know that has a dramatic impact on our viewers in the PD and in southeastern North Carolina, aside from the folks here on the Strand.
I-73 is without doubt the most important infrastructure project in South Carolina. When you look at places like Marlboro, Marion, and Dillon County, where they have 16, 18, 20% unemployment, that's unconscionable. In the greatest nation in the world, we should not have 20% of any people unemployed. But we need an interstate to bring new industry. And so what we're trying to do is to get I-73 built. It starts in Michigan, it ends in South Carolina, and it will not only bring with it more tourists, it will bring jobs, and in the event of a hurricane, it could save lives to get people out of here and to safety. We think all of these reasons, and others, of course, are why the state and federal government should invest in I-73. Now, a year ago, we were risking losing the corridor. There was another state that was about ready to steal that designation, and we would have lost an interstate for our foreseeable future. It's back on the front burner, but it's going to take money. Highways aren't built with good intentions and great ideas. It takes government funds. We here along the Grand Strand are more than willing to pay more than our fair share, but we're going to need help from Washington and Columbia. And in fact, just next week, we'll be traveling to Washington and meeting with every member of the South Carolina delegation, as well as members of other delegations, to explain to them why it's so important that that transportation bill funds I-73, as well as an airport expansion. If we can get an expanded airport and an interstate, I think you will see an economic explosion, not only here in Myrtle Beach, but throughout the PD and a good part of South Carolina that will carry us well into the future with new, high-paying jobs.
Brad, what could a viewer do to be involved in that? What could they do to be involved, whether it's in airport expansion or an I-73 or just learning more if they're not a chamber member, but if they think they could be involved, or could they be involved?
Absolutely. The best thing that any viewer could do is when you meet with an elected official, whether it's your county council, your local state representatives, or your congressman or senator, ask them a simple question. What are you doing for I-73? We have found simply by telling them and again and again and again how important this is, this project has raised in priority a great level. Secondly, and more importantly, we are not looking for money necessarily, but people who support this project to be part of a grassroots effort. So when we need to contact legislators and let them know just how important this is, we need to know that we have the backing of not only the business community, but residents who want to see higher paying jobs for South Carolina, residents who want better access to hospitals and schools, and residents who want their fair share, an interstate right in this area. You know, we're the only major vacation destination without an interstate access. So we think for anybody that wants to get involved, contact the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber, where we also house the South Carolina I-73 Association, 843-626-7444, or if you're on the internet, www.i73sc.com. And there's a website with a lot of information that's very, very relevant. Greg, we could have this interstate built in parts of South Carolina within the next 7 to 10 years, or we could wait another 10 years to see if we'll get funding. It's really up to the people in elected office now as to whether or not this interstate gets built. We're hoping they'll do it so we can bring new jobs to South Carolina.
And that, just getting the buzz going, talking to any elected official, that's an excellent idea. Whether it's your city council person to then talk to county, to then talk to legislators, what are you doing about I-73? That's so simple, but so valuable.
You know, your city council and your county council, in one sense, are elected lobbyists because when they speak on behalf of your government, they speak loud and clear. And we've seen here in Horry County, with all of our cities and counties getting on board, makes it a lot easier to leverage the need for new projects like an interstate. So we're hoping to continue to build upon the momentum we have now and bring that to South Carolina in the near future.
Brad, on the heels of you joining the Chamber, or joining as CEO of the Chamber, you all did an amazing market study. And I think the results of that, much of it, focused on tourism advertising, continuing to spend more to bring more folks here, which would hopefully expand. Of course, that has an impact on all Chamber members, whether they think about it directly or not. It has an indirect impact, if not direct. Can you share with the viewers a little about what you all are doing to target those funds, Chamber funds, to really continue to bring folks in?
Absolutely. We're very conscious of the fact that we're spending public dollars. The dollars we spend typically will bring in about a 300-to-1 impact. So
Wow.
We know when we spend it well, it pays off. And of course, that doesn't just pay off in hotels and restaurants. That money will recirculate through our economy, sometimes as much as 10 or 15 times. So directly or indirectly, all of us are related to tourism, and all of us benefit. As well, of course, Greg, as you know, that money goes in to pay for schools in South Carolina and government programs and other services that we all need through our local and state government. But what we're looking to do is to focus on markets that we think offer great opportunity. Some markets are close by and yet have a lot of potential, like Atlanta. And some markets are relatively emerging markets, like a Chicago, where we now are going to have daily air service. And that's an exciting prospect. If you're sitting in Chicago in the middle of the winter, not sure where to go next weekend, but you can get to the Myrtle Beach area with a quick, direct, cheap flight, what a great place to go. Where would you go? So we want to take that message to new and emerging markets, as well as to repenetrate the markets that know about us, but just be reminded. One of our greatest strengths is also a challenge. We have so much to offer, and we have such diversity in this destination that if you haven't been to the Myrtle Beach area in the last 5 years, you haven't been to Myrtle Beach. But we want to make sure that we carry that message loud and clear. And of course, we recently hired a high-level marketing executive. We went on a national search to bring the most talented person we could find to the Myrtle Beach area to not only do what we've done in the past, but take our marketing to a new level. And Theda Jackson has a background that is quite impressive, a Harvard degree, an extensive career with Coca-Cola, and then a very impressive resume that included the Convention and Visitors Bureau of Denver. Theda brings with us a lot of experience, expertise, and excitement that's going to help us elevate our marketing to a whole new level.
Brad, I'm so glad you mentioned challenges. We got about 5 minutes. There are some other challenges. You talked about getting to the legislators in the right way, making sure they know not only about issues in South Carolina, but on the national level about I-73. What are some other challenges that you face on a daily basis?
I think one of the greatest challenges, Greg, that we face is always finding a way to meet the needs of 2,400 businesses. We have businesses and individual members, as you mentioned, that might have 1 or 2 employees. We have some that have hundreds or thousands of employees. And I think one of the greatest challenges at the Chamber is to balance those needs. We want to be an area chamber that represents not only all businesses, but the community well. And so trying to keep in sync with what the community needs, what the businesses need, and striking that balance. And what a small entrepreneur can benefit from may or may not impact a large business, and in some cases vice versa. But we want to make sure we're serving all segments of our membership well. I don't want to be a chamber they join just because it's the right thing to do. I want to be a chamber they join because they need us and we help them get better. I think one of the other challenges we face, and this is true for any organization, is there's a tendency sometimes to grow and get comfortable with what you've done in the past. And I think one of the greatest challenges in this area and one of the greatest challenges at the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber is to be willing to change. Not change for the sake of change, but change for the sake of progress. And if we can figure out the right things to do and how to go about doing them with a strong network of volunteers, a very valuable core of community leaders that are committed to the Chamber and its agenda, and a very talented, innovative staff, I don't think there's anything we can't do when we put our sights on it, work together to accomplish those goals and objectives.
Brad, that is so hard at times. You know, when you talk about that, I think I saw a pen that you all had at a meeting or otherwise, but we've always done it this way. And, you know, when an area's grown exponentially over the last 20 years, you wonder, how could we do any more? You know, that aspect of we've always done it this way, why rock the apple cart? But you talk about change for improvement. I mean, really making those efforts and the refocus, re-energize, and be more results-oriented enables you to make sure that change is in a positive direction.
Absolutely. You think about it, this is the first time in our country's history where a business that's top of its game today could be out of business tomorrow. The world changes that quickly. And the days where you could do things the same old way and hope to get the same old results, those just don't exist anymore. So I don't think we have the choice, Greg, to stay the same. I think we can move forward and we can move backward. And to me, the greatest challenge and our objective is to recognize what changes need to be made and then work with others to make those happen. To me, the mission is really simple and very crystal clear. It's to ensure that the finest days of the Myrtle Beach area lie before it, not behind it. And that's the challenge on a day-to-day basis as well as long-term.
Think about for you, Brad, you know, you've got so much going on, so many folks pulling you in different directions, so many amazing things going on. How do you have time to do it all?
Well, if you ask my wife and kids, I don't do it very well. The Chamber's an exciting place to be. I am every bit as energized as I once was. I also have a much greater appreciation for Ashby Ward being able to do this for 30 years. I don't know how he did it now that I've been in it for 1 year, but it's an exciting thing, and I don't do it myself. I've got a great team of staff behind me, an excellent board, and a lot of volunteers that are very good to work with you when you need it and how you need it. For me, it's exciting, it's fun, it does become challenging at times, and as much as I would love to be able to do more, I think the key is to prioritize. And I believe as a leader of an organization like the Chamber, one of my primary objectives and most important goals is to work with and through people. I can work on projects and I can give my ideas, but at the end of the day, this isn't about Brad. It's about the Chamber and the community, and so I try to keep in mind that my job is to motivate and inspire people and let those around me do the heavy lifting, because frankly, they're a lot better at that than I am. If I can make them just a little bit better or knock down just a few obstacles that are in their way, then I think I've made my day a success and helped them be better at what they do.
Brad, there's so many more questions I'd like to ask. We've got to get you back another time to do that. Thanks so much for being with us
Thank
this
you,
morning.
Greg. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Brad Dean coming up next. You always want to ask a CEO, what accomplishment over the last year are you most proud, or what would you be doing, for instance, for Brad, if you weren't running the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce with so many great teammates there? It's amazing. We couldn't ask him all that, but we were able to hear him talk about Interstate 73, and he heard you say a couple of simple words. You heard him say a couple of simple words. Ask your legislator, ask anyone, ask any elected official, what are you doing about I-73 that's so momentous? Be a part of it. There's so many aspects. We weren't able to talk about hosting Travel South in 2007 to the governor's event next year. So many activities going on within the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. He gave you a phone number, 843-626-7444. Give him a call. See how you can be involved in I-73, providing evacuation routes for the area. When we think about storms, we think about what hits us on a constant basis. Obviously, tomorrow we're thinking about 9/11. We're thinking about 3 years of unparalleled growth in this area, and there'll be a lot more growth to come. The Chamber has a lot to do with that, and Brad Dean's very involved.